this happened a year ago.
All right, looks like everybody's here. We'll go ahead and get started. I got about an hour to cover what's gonna happen here. Yeah, I think everyone in here has probably already signed an informational bulletin about what's coming. We're retracting that and actually gonna send that out as a revision today. Initially, these major changes were gonna happen August 2nd. There will be some minor changes August 2nd, but the big change that was in that informational bulletin and what we're covering here happens on the 7th of September. That's the first Tuesday after the Labor Day Monday when we come back. So most everything we're talking about here is related to the 7th of September. The battalion chiefs and the assistants have all seen this, have been through the same class. It's being delivered to the company officers, the lieutenants, and your responsibility is to take it back, and over the next month between now and September is to cover it with your staff, make sure everybody's on the same page. Because there are fleet map changes, and there will be transition weeks where some may have one fleet map, some may have the other, and there's going to be some uniqueness to how you call on different talk groups, depending on which radio you have. So for a few weeks there, you'll be coming in, evaluating your radio. Do I have the new or the old? And whichever one you have will dictate how you use it after September the 7th. So simply put, basically what's happening is we're going to move the human dispatcher to Samantha. Samantha is going to announce the initial dispatch on dispatch 1. And dispatch 1 will become a dispatch-only frequency. When your radios are touched with a new fleet map change, you will not have the ability to transmit back on dispatch 1. Its primary function is to shoot out one call after another, which means you're going to move all of your traffic over to operations, which means all the traffic that's currently on operations is going to a new talk group called fire support. So the little movement in the traffic. And so what you're doing on 2 talk groups today, those 2 being dispatch and ops, is going to be done on 3 after September. That's going to be dispatch, ops, and fire support. And that's what we're going to go through here. But the simplistic approach is basically what dispatch is going to be for Samantha only. So this is basically broke down in 3 phases. Today, we're currently in phase 1, and that phase is nothing more than the fact that the technology is in place, it's technically working, and every call, whether it's a city call or a county call, is being transmitted over TAC 78 by Samantha's voice. So on September, so we're basically going to turn that dial to dispatch here in the very near future. So this is phase 1 where we're doing that. If you've not listened to TAC 78, you'll be able to hear that. The way you hear a call in the station when Samantha announces it is what's going out over TAC 78 for every call, city and county. So what's going to happen on August 2nd, I told you there will be a minor change, is nothing will change with your fleet map. The procedures you have in the field will not change on August 2nd. The one thing that is going to change is Samantha will be heard on dispatch. We're going to tune that dial from TAC 78 to dispatch 1, and there's going to be Samantha going out with the primary dispatch or the primary alerting of those events, and then the dispatcher will also be heard in a post-dispatch environment and giving you auxiliary information. So it'll be a blend of Samantha and the human dispatcher. You'll still call on dispatch 1, you'll still do your size up on dispatch 1. Everything you do today on dispatch 1 will be done on dispatch 1 on August 2nd up to September the 7th. So the only difference is if you're out in the streets, at the grocery store, doing pre-plans, whatever the case may be, and you're listening to dispatch, you're going to hear Samantha's voice initially, and then you may hear the dispatcher's voice. On Tuesday, September the 7th, we're going to call this phase 3. This is kind of the final phase. Samantha's voice will be heard on dispatch, but field units will not be talking back on dispatch 1. And when you get a fleet map change or a code plug change on your radio, it will be enforced. What I mean by that is the code plug, if you're tuned to dispatch 1 on a radio that's had a fleet map change or a code plug change and you key up, you're going to get this. That's what dispatch 1 is going to do to you. If you look down at the top, it's going to say listen. And if you're looking at the back, it says listen only. But that's what dispatch mode is going to be in the new radios, is listen only. So that we're guaranteed the dispatcher can send one call after another, and we should stop hearing the dispatcher say, all units stand by, I've got another call. Doesn't matter, nobody's calling her back on that channel. She can process the next call and send the next call out, because you guys are gonna be talking to that dispatcher on operations, on GCR. So, on September the 2nd, that happens, as well as the fleet mapping will start to change to enforce that. So, up until the radios are changed, the business rule across city and county is, even though you have a radio capable of transmitting on dispatch 1, at shift change the morning of the 7th, you don't. You follow these procedures we're going through here. You will, all your traffic will move to operations.
But they will have one radio, right? Is that right now?
Mm-hmm.
They'll have that one radio.
Yeah, you're gonna have, prior to September the 7th, in preparation for the training you're gonna go back and do between now and the 7th, you're gonna have one radio that's got the code plug so that you can play with the radio, go through the talk groups, and see how that's laid out. So why are we doing this? Basically, we're doing it to reduce the overall call processing time. Many of you don't know it unless you hear the dispatcher say, all units stand by. I've got another call to dispatch. What that basically means is while she was dispatching that one call that you heard, another call dropped in the queue, and it could have been a structure fire while she's dispatching out a sick call. Once they pick up that sick call and start that whole process of alerting the station, they have to finish dispatching that call. Even if they see a structure fire or a structure fire with an entrapment drop in the queue, they have to process that call and verbalize it before they can pick the next one up and dispatch. So now that call could have sat there for 30 seconds before they process it and send it out. That's 30 more seconds of burn time. So this is what we're trying to eliminate, because if the dispatcher doesn't have to speak the dispatch, Samantha will be doing it. It allows that dispatcher to reach down and pick up that second call, process it, and get it out faster. And it's more than just one call sitting in the queue many times. Almost on a daily basis, between 4 and 5 o'clock, you can have 2 or 3 calls that drop in the queue at the same time. We've all been in the service long enough to know that when you have 2 bad things happen in a day, there's going to be a third. Or 2 fatalities in a week, there'll be a third. They come in 3. If there's 2 calls drop in the queue, there'll be a third drop. It follows that, whatever that is. I mean, you see it all the time. So we're eliminating the human dispatcher from speaking, providing time to process other events. We're giving quick, consistent, minimal dispatch information to alert the units. We're providing a dispatch-only talk group for the outbound alerting, no talk back. So every day on dispatch 1, you're going to have the same voice, same dialect, same tone. Everything's going to be constant, day in and day out, because it's going to be Samantha's voice going out. So they'll be doing this using USDD's G2 voice alert, which is the same company that has the hardware, the fire station hardware in your station today. So it's all the same product. That's why how they work well together. But to do all of this, there's going to be some radio traffic changes. And we're going to basically, the slides after this one are going to hone in on these 3 things. Talking about the dispatch talk group that's outbound only. GM 911 and fire will utilize 3 talk groups rather than 2. Today, your 2 talk groups, again, are dispatch and ops. September 7th, they're going to be dispatch, ops, and fire support. Field radios, mobiles, all portables will undergo a code plug change to accommodate these changes. And then TAC channel names are going to change. It will no longer be TAC 14, it will be something different. In addition, the total number of TAC channels will decrease. You have TAC channels that start in zone 1 and go through zone 6 or 7, somewhere in there. They will not go outside of zone 3. You will live TAC channel-wise in 3 zones, zones 1, 2, or 3, or A, B, C. So there'll be a reduced number, but it'll be in those 3 zones. This is your 3 talk groups you'll be dealing with after September 7th. Dispatch, fire operations, fire support. Where this term came from, this is a new talk group. This is a term used in your system status plan. When we go to system status orange, right behind yellow, when it gets really bad and we got someone in the 911 center, AC1 goes up there, fire marshal goes up there, I may go up there, and we're sitting with a dispatcher. There's so many calls in the queue now that we're having to tell them, don't dispatch this call, don't dispatch this call, because if we allow them to dispatch every call that dropped in the queue, they would deplete our resources immediately. And we wouldn't have units to respond to structure fires or real cardiac calls, because we'd be going on trees downs and electrical hazards and all that. So there's a lot of working with the fire marshal's office for the county an AC1 for the city to say, hold this, we're gonna send that to field ops, we're not gonna send a fire unit on. So when that happens today in condition orange, the dispatcher comes on and says, all units, we're gonna allocate TAC 34 as your fire support channel. And that becomes the channel where when you have a tree down that you think goes to field ops, you get on TAC 34 designated as fire support during these conditions, and you're calling someone that answers you to give that up for field ops. It could be a dispatcher or it could be the EOC. But what happens is every time we've done this, which is only about 3 times, there's always a different channel assigned as your fire support. So the bulk of remembering this and the bulk of the workload comes back on you. Now, right in the middle of this event, I'm having to change the way I do business, and I've got fire operations and I've got fire support. Fire support, I have to remember it's TAC 34 and to go there. We're gonna do away with that. This is gonna be your daily operations, and you're gonna see how that's gonna change under condition orange. This is your normal day-to-day operations. This is what it will be like September 7th. Still 2 human dispatchers. That first dispatcher is gonna be responsible for 2 talk groups. That dispatcher is sitting there processing the call, bringing it up, hitting the recommend, finding its engine 8, putting in a TAC channel if it's appropriate, and hitting dispatch. And then that dispatcher doesn't do anything else because Samantha's gonna process the call and send it out over dispatch 1. And then if that dispatcher has something to say to engine 8 in this scenario, they will be calling you on fire operations or fire ops. Your communications with the dispatcher will be on fire ops between the time you're dispatched and the time you arrive. So now in this scenario, engine 8 arrives, they've got the power line down, they need Duke Energy, they call on fire support. That fire support is where you call for Duke Energy, P&G, all the things you do on fire ops today get done on fire support. All the things you do on fire dispatch today get done on fire operations. That make sense? Just shifting the names around a little bit. We thought about changing this name to something totally different, but operations is really what it is. That's where you're operating back and forth between you and the dispatcher until you get there. And you move either to a TAC channel, and then you're calling for additional resources on fire support. Here's where the change takes place in system status orange and system status red. Rather than us change the way we do business in the field, we'll get dispatched by Samantha, we'll talk to the dispatcher on fire ops, and we'll call fire support on fire support. But we got 3 dispatchers doing this. We're gonna add a 3rd dispatcher up there to handle the workload while you continue to do business status quo. This dispatcher, remember, is sitting there looking at the 15 calls that just dropped in the queue and working with Chief Gossett on which ones do I send, which ones do I don't send. So this dispatcher is really busy with him and the county fire marshal's office. All we need this dispatcher doing is figuring that out and sending it out. Once you do get dispatched, you're gonna talk to this dispatcher who's been there reading the notes and ready to feed you that information without having to worry about all these other calls sitting in the queue. And then when you get on scene and you need P&G, field ops, you're gonna go to fire support like you've done day in and day out. So to make some of this happen, there's gonna be some fleet map changes. This is your current fleet map. Positions 1 through 16, which represent every position you can access on the top dial of the radio. We start in dispatch 1, there's ops and there's TAC, all the way down to fire VR. I didn't know there's actually 23 talk groups that you can get to in each position. Positions 17 through 23 are accessible only through the keypad, but you can go to those channels if there was any talk groups there to be on. I don't think there are on your current radio, but there will be in the new fleet map. So this is what your new fleet map's gonna look like. We're gonna start over here in position 1. The channel you're gonna talk to the dispatcher on the most, operations, will be the very first one. The position you talk to get P&G, Duke Energy, called GCF support, is gonna be position 2. Pretty much like what's going on over here. You talk the most on dispatch, you talk to ops for field support, or on ops, so that's gonna be the same here. So that's a new one. If you look at your legend, that's a new talk group in position 2. Position 3 holds your TAC channel, GFD TAC. In the county, that's their private TAC. And then we got TAC channels that go through from position 4 all the way to position 11. We'll talk about that more here in a second. Then you've got a new talk group called Fire Conference and one called EM. Those are red. Those are new talk groups with ADP, which is digital encryption. So as soon as you key it up, it's digitally encrypted, it's encoded, transmitted, receiving decodes it, the encryption, and you can hear it. So if you've got something that you don't want the media to know about, or everyone who has a scanner, you might choose Fire Conference to talk to your field units because it's digitally encrypted. As well as EM Conference, which will probably not be used in the field very much. Notice it's in position 17. The only way you can get to that is take your phone out of the leather holster, get to the keypad, and then change your channel that way. PS Conference is here. GCF Dispatch is position 14. Notice it's yellow, which means it's receive only. So even if I take my dial and go to the 14th position in zone 1, 2, or 3, I can listen to dispatch. I don't have to scan, but if I go to key it up, it's going to bump me just like what you heard just a second ago. You're not going to be able to transmit. Fire Local, Fire DR is still in the last 2 positions, still giving you the ability that in a dark environment, I can go all the way to the left and get to a dispatcher, or I can go all the way to the right and hopefully get to a commander sitting out in the car listening to Fire DR. Same safety concepts you have today. So let's talk about this naming, this nomenclature. The way we named our TAC channels up till now was each zone, you had zone 1 position 4 equated to TAC 14. So if I knew which zone I was in, I could go all the way to the left, 4 clicks to the right, I knew I was position 14 or TAC 14. That worked all the way down to 9. But we're doing away with staging 1, and we're doing away with GC Comm. They will no longer be in your radios. They were not utilized. GC Common was not utilized very much. Staging was used very little. And so we're doing away with those and replacing that with 2 new TAC channels. But if we follow this naming, this right here would become TAC 110 or TAC 110. Kind of throws it all out of kilter a little bit. So what we tried to do was rename it to where it was a little more consistent. Just like today, the ABC switch on the top of your radio will move you from zone 1, 2, or 3, or zone A, B, and C. So we're using that. Zone 1 is zone A. Zone A position 4 is TAC alpha 4. Alpha 5 all the way through alpha 9, but when I get to 10, it works there too. This can be alpha 10 and alpha 11. So we're picking up 2 more TAC channels in the first zone, but you're only going to have 3 zones. So this is TAC Bravo 4, TAC Charlie 4, all the way down the line. Now, with that, we're still going to skip every other channel. So we're going to issue TAC Alpha 4 on your structure fire. It gives you an expansion TAC channel in case the event escalates. And the next TAC channel assigned would be Alpha 6, Alpha 8, Alpha 10, et cetera, et cetera. And then we move into Bravo. That said, we do have less TAC channels overall. So your focus is when I get to an event that's starting to de-escalate, units are being cleared, and I don't need my TAC channel anymore. You want to free it up as quick as you can, especially in busy times, with the understanding that we may be starting to exhaust these 12 total working events that have TAC channels. If you can free it up and move to the private TAC or GFD TAC, you may want to do that to free up the TAC channel. Because what will have to happen is if we assign all 12 and get down to Charlie 10, we will have to come back up here and start using the expansion TAC channels. So we would then issue TAC Alpha 5. Now, you might be using TAC Alpha 4, and that limits your ability to expand on your incident if it starts to escalate.
How often does that happen?
Well, we went back and looked at the data of all the, and listened to all the times the radio has been used. And the TAC channels that are up in zones 4, 5, and 6 were very infrequent. That's what supported us only having this amount of TAC channels, in addition to the next version of our CAD system is going to have what's called a TAC channel manager. And that's going to help to manage the TAC channels a little bit more, because we feel like the reason that we get up into zone 4 and 5 of the TAC channels is because the dispatcher has no good way to keep up with what's been assigned other than a grease board. They have a grease board that has multiple columns with the tacks in there, and when they assign tack 14, they go put tack 14, and then they keep doing it. Well, if you call and you release tack 24, if they forgot to go erase it with their finger, then they don't know that's the next one to issue out. But what will happen with the tack channel manager is as soon as you clear it and they clear it out of the system and the system dispatches the next call, that tack channel will be automatically inserted. The dispatcher doesn't have to remember what's free and what's not. So we feel like with that automation, we won't get into the tack zones 4, 5, and 6. Plus you've got 2, 4, 6 extra tacks here in these 3 zones. So we're hoping we're not going to experience that.
Chief, since we went rid of the staging, what would we use for staging now?
Your expansion tack channel. You're an alpha 5, you're an alpha 4. So during this hybrid phase, we will not be using these tack channels. And that's because your old radio doesn't have a tack alpha 10. Remember, what's in that position, 10 and 11, is staging 1 and GC common. And staging 1 and alpha 10 are not the same talk group. It's just not the same frequency. So until we get every radio code plug changed on every radio, not only in the city but the county, GM 911 cannot start issuing these 2 tack channels, or these tack channels. Because there would be a blend of, some of you would have it, some of you would not. So that's going to limit us in our tack channels even more for the first couple of months until that's done. We're estimating, what, Thanksgiving, Christmas, something like that? We, Greensboro Fire, will have ours knocked out 2 or 3 weeks. The county will take the longest to get out and make all those changes. But GM 911 will not issue tack alpha 10 just to a city unit to keep it consistent. They probably will not do it until somebody gives them the go-ahead to do that.
Chief, can you tell them, will we still be in the practice of just getting a far-out tack channel for training, hydrant testing, things like that? Is that how we're going to still proceed?
I said, I think, isn't there a
Zone
whole
five.
zone?
Zone 5, okay, so
Yeah.
we can go to the higher zone.
Zone 5 will have all your training.
Yeah, I don't have the whole template up here, but I was thinking there was an entire zone dedicated for stuff like that. Yeah, so you probably wouldn't want to take up one of these tack channels for any hydrant testing, any training on a trail or anything like that. You would want to leave these clear, especially since they're so limited. Dual terminology. Now, I told you that staging 1 and alpha 10 tack channel were not the same, but tack 14 in our current fleet map and tack alpha 4 are the same. This radio's been touched with a new fleet map. And if you took one of yours and got on tack 14 and I put mine on alpha 4 and keyed it up, we'd be talking to each other. It's the same talk group with a different label, okay? So 14 equals A4, 15 equals A5, 24 equals Bravo 4, and tack 34 equals Charlie 4, okay? So on September the 7th, here comes one of the hardest parts. On September 7th, they will start issuing Alpha 4. Your job and your company's job is, I got issued Alpha 4, I still got the old code plug. What does that translate to? That translates to 34, Alpha 4 and 14. Now, to assist with this a little bit, because the dispatcher is not going to be dispatching this, Samantha is, we have the flexibility to go in the system and say, when I see Alpha 4, say this. So the dispatcher, if they will key in Alpha 4 for your tack assignment, we're going to make Samantha announce over the radio and inside your station, tack Alpha 4 and tack 14. Like she's assigning 2 tack channels, but they're actually one and the same. Does that make sense? But keep in mind, what's going across that scroller in the station is not going to say both. It's just going to say Alpha 4. So we'll help you with the translation a little bit by letting Samantha announce it. If you got the app on your phone and you didn't hear it, pull the app out, find your call, hit the speaker icon, and listen to her announce it again. She'll say, tack Bravo 6 and tack 26. The same book. This talks specifically about the fire support channel. Fire support is where you're going to ask for those resources. We use Duke Energy, P&G. Basically, all the information between command and GM 911 is done on that talk group. But because this is a new talk group, the location of access is going to be different depending on which code plug you have. Because on September the 7th, no one's radio will be touched, but we're moving forward with this. So, because none of you will have the fire support channel, what we're having to do is patch a few channels together. So we're actually going to patch fire support against staging 1, because we're doing away with staging 1. So what that means is, we're going to take staging 1 in zone 1, and we're going to take staging 2 in zone 2, and we're going to take staging 3 in zone 3, and those 3 separate channels will be patched against GCF support in the new radio. The second dispatcher is sitting up there on the support console, and she's monitoring this frequency for the new radio, but because these stagings are patched to it, if you get assigned TAC 14 on a call, or TAC Alpha 4, and you're on the scene and you need Duke Energy and you have an old radio, you're gonna slide down in zone 1 to staging 1, and you're gonna call fire support. But you're gonna be doing it on staging 1, until your radio gets a new code plug. Now, we did staging 1, 2, and 3. Keep in mind, staging 1, staging 2, and staging 3 are 3 separate talk groups. They're not the same, but when they're patched, they're all gonna be the same. And I think they're patched now. But we wanted to do that because if you're over in zone 3 and you got assigned Charlie 4 as your TAC, your working TAC channel, and now you need P&G, I didn't want you to have to come back to TAC 1 to go down to staging 1. Because you're going to be able to slide down in position 10 on zone 3 and go to staging 3 to call fire support. It's only a 2-week period of time, according to the schedule, that this kind of happens. Till you could, and you could be one of the very first radios to be done. Once you get a new radio, you don't even have to worry about the staging 1, because you're going to have fire support in your radio. Scanning. Scan priorities need to change. They got to change in mobiles, portables, and the house radio that's tied to your fire station alert. So we talk about this. When that code plug is changed, there will be a scan list pre-programmed already that you can add to. You can add channels to the scan list, but what you cannot do is you cannot remove GCS dispatch from the highest level of scan priority. Guaranteeing you that no matter where you are, if you turn scan on, you're going to be listening to dispatch, because if you're in the field, that's how you're going to hear your call, through Samantha on dispatch 1. You want to be guaranteed that the previous shift didn't get in there monkeying around with the scan list and actually remove dispatch 1 from your scan list. So when you're out, I go to scan, I know I can hear the call. And then, of course, GCF dispatch will not talk back when the code plug's updated. If you get a call, release the scan and go to ops, because that's where they're going to be talking to you. So I get a call right now, I've been in scan, I'm assuming my dial is in operations, which is position 1. I would probably want to release the scan, because as I'm walking to the truck from the grocery store, if they start dispatching another call, Samantha's going to trump, because I'm still scanning dispatch 1, but I got the dispatcher calling me on ops to tell me to stage because they got gunshot. So I'd want to drop my scan and listen to ops, because that's where they're going to call you on if they need you until you get on the truck. Mobiles, same setup as the portables. Dispatch will be the priority. I'm assuming you guys leave your radios in your trucks now on dispatch, so you can get the size up from that radio, which translates into operations will be where the selector is, and when you're out and about, you'll have the scan on so you can hear dispatch from that radio, because scan will be priority. And then if you get a call, you're probably going to drop that scan so you can hear operations and not be walked on by the next dispatch in busy times. Of course, if you're sitting right in front of that MCT, as soon as they dispatch you, you're going to see it pop on the MCT as well, if they're functioning. House radios are going to be a little bit different, because you need ops to be primary. let's make it clear here, because this has not always been clear. The Samantha voice that you hear in the station today is not in sync, and the same voice you hear come across TAC 78 is the same voice, but it's not the same, it's not in sync. What happens is when the dispatcher hits dispatch in the 911 center, it sends data across the fiber network to that black ATX box, fire station alerting box, and then that translates, what do I need to do? And Samantha announces internal, totally separate from what's going over dispatch. And when Samantha is speaking in your fire station, any radio traffic that's tied to that ATX is suppressed. So Samantha always has priority when she's alerting you or any unit in your station. But when she's done alerting and she opens up the speakers for the next 2 minutes, the countdown clock, whatever radio is tied into that ATX you get to hear. So in this case, this radio is going to have dispatch and ops with a priority set on ops, because as you're walking out of the kitchen going to the truck, if the dispatcher keys up on operations and says, engine X, you need to stay short, stay at your station, we got gunshots in the area, you don't want to be walked on by another dispatch coming across that frequency. You want to hear her talking to you on ops, because you may or may not have a lapel mic on. What that means is, day in and day out, if you're one of those companies that likes to go turn the speakers on and listen to the city, you'll hear dispatch until somebody keys up on operations, and then they're going to walk on any dispatch that you're listening to in the community. So let's say engine 8 gets dispatched, and you hear Samantha coming across dispatch 1, which is piped in through the ATX and coming across the speaker above your head, but the previous call was 11 going on a 1050, and 11 pulls up on ops and gives the size up of what they have. It's going to walk on that dispatch. But if you happen to get a call and got alerted in the station, Samantha's going to trump dispatch and ops. So you don't have to worry about losing a call, because Samantha's going to take over inside the station. Timeline, May through September, I gotta change this. This is when code plug development testing's been going on. I've got one here, there's others, mine's old, mine doesn't even have the code plug I showed you here, because there's been some movement in the last few weeks. Mid-August to October, that's probably late August, early September to October, portables, mobiles, and station radios undergo these code plug changes, firmware updates. And then these are the 2 key dates. Again, on August the 2nd, none of this fleet map stuff changes. Operation for you guys is the same. The only thing that's going to be different is you're going to hear Samantha on dispatch 1 and the human dispatcher. From this date to this date, you'll hear both. But on this date, you'll stop hearing the dispatcher on dispatch 1. They move to operations to talk to you. And the only thing you hear on dispatch is Samantha. That's what we're looking for. Radio configuration. Chief Gossett just finalized that today. I'm hoping to get that informational bulletin out probably before you get back to the station. We'll get that into this presentation, because this presentation will live on the main page of Central Station, so you can cover it with your staff. And then these last 3 slides are basically nothing more than a review. We're talking about fire dispatch on this slide, all the bullet points that are specific to fire dispatch, all the ones specific to fire ops, and the ones specific to fire support. Remember the staging 1, 2, 3 for the old code plug. And then we're going to implement some things we were hoping to do before COVID hit, to be consistent with the county. And they have to do, I put Mayday and orange button, but really it's just an orange button, because your Mayday procedures, first and second, don't change. What's changing here is what happens when you do hit the orange button, with the orange button not being your primary Mayday procedure. But what happens with any radio you're carrying right now, if you hit the orange button, it transmits that on PS Help, and it goes to GM 911. The PS Help is not going to be part of the new code plug, so you won't be able to get that. What the county was doing was, whatever channel you're on, TAC channel you're on, when you press the orange button, it transmits to all those that are on the TAC channel. So assuming all of us are on the same fire, we're all on Alpha 4, and I reach down and press my button to orange button on Alpha 4, it's going to transmit, and every one of your radios are going to have an audible and a visual alert, and when you look at the screen, it's going to tell you that I just pressed the orange button. So we all know who's in trouble. We all know it's firefight, Engine 8 firefighter 240. So now we're all focused on who it is. We're not waiting on the dispatcher to call and say, this person just pressed the orange button. Just like today, if I press this orange button, I'm locked in on that talk group. I can't change it until it's cleared. What doesn't happen is it doesn't interfere with the process of you guys being able to talk, but the policy procedure of keeping the traffic low until we find the person that's in distress and or clear the signal still applies. The other thing is, I use this scenario. I got on the wrong tap channel. We were assigned Alpha 4. I didn't make one too many clicks, and I've been on Alpha 5 the whole time. I'm in the building, I get in trouble. For whatever reason, I skip to process number 3, and I press my orange button. You guys on Alpha 4 don't hear it, don't know about it. GM 911 does, and anyone else who might be on Alpha 5. GM 911 does, their policy would be call command, let them know that a unit that's on that call has pressed the button on Alpha 5. So if we move over to Alpha 5, we could probably see it, hear it. Likewise, if you're on GCF dispatch, GCF ops, or support, and you press the orange button, it goes to the 911 consoles as well. And I guess, I'm assuming that any of us are on that channel, we'll see that alert as well. Here's some questions that's come up during this class that I've put down here. If an older radio, one without the new code plug, presses the orange button while on TAC 14, where will it go? I said TAC 14 and Alpha 4 were the same, but in this case, for the orange button, they're not. Yours on September the 7th, if pressed on TAC 14 before the code plug update, will go to PSL and go to GM 911. If I happen to be on Alpha 4, I don't expect to see that. That may or may not hold true. But we would expect the dispatcher to call command and inform of the activation. Somebody asked about High Point. High Point's going through some changes. They've dropped off of our core network. Zone 9 in the new code plug is dedicated to High Point Fire. Can I talk to High Point on these talk groups? The answer is most of you cannot. Even though you can hear, only those units on the west side that run with them will be able to talk, because we're limited as the number of IDs that can actually transmit and talk to High Point. And those units were, Alex?
Engine 20, ladder 20, engine 52, ladder 52, part 3.
So while you'll have the ability to go to the zone 9 and listen, you won't transmit.
Maybe I'm getting in the weeds here, but on relocations and stuff like that, people are running on 5 point. What is there a plan for that?
Nope,
What's that?
no, that's all we got. Ideally, the tank chief's gonna go with you. Typically how we used to do it in the past. Tank chief stand next to the tank chief, and you just have to coordinate like that.
So it sounds like you'll have a talk group here, and they'll have a talk group.
Yeah. That's how we had to do it before.
So I think I covered this one. If I have a new code plug, if I press the orange button on Alpha 4, will it lock up the radio so I can't change the talk group? Yes, it will, just as it does today. Shouldn't be any change there. We talked about how this was done for the purpose of freeing up or reducing call processing. On this shift, last week or week before last, we did a test. And we went up to 911 center and we took Samantha and tuned her from TAC 78 to dispatch 1. It was on this shift, you may have heard it. We sat down, we had 5 calls in the queue. We were using stations 12, station 16, station 9, station 24, and fire station 1. Each address was the fire station's address, and we put an engine company from that on each call. In the 911 center, to get these to process really quick and push these out, we had 4 or 5 different dispatchers, and we said, dispatcher 1, when you hit dispatch, the dispatcher didn't say anything because Samantha's announcing it over dispatch 1. You do yours, 2 seconds later, you do yours, 2 seconds later, you do yours. 2 seconds apart on all 5 calls, we processed those. And so what happened is we started hearing Station 12's county tones go out over dispatch. And then we heard Samantha announce that call. Well, before she could get done announcing Station 12's call, the fifth dispatcher had already processed Engine 1's call. And the traffic went to Station 1, and Samantha announced inside the station while she was still dispatching Station 12 over across Dispatch 1. So it was going to be a long time before Engine 1 would ever hear it, but they got notified through the fire station alerting rather quick. As luck would have it, right in the middle of all that, there was a real call dropped in the queue for Engine 56. And it was a fall for them. So I told the dispatcher, process it. She's now moved down to the second call. She's dispatching Station 16 with the tones and the audible. She processed 56 calls. It went across the fiber network, hit the ATX in Station 56. Samantha alerted. The guys heard it, went to the truck, cranked up, pulled out on the apron. They got notes on the MCT from fire support, aka operations. It said 1022 Authority EMS. They confirmed on the channel, backed the truck in, cleared themselves, got off the truck, and it was yet a little while before they ever heard that call announced as the sixth and final call across Dispatch 1. That's how much lead time they had when there was 5 calls, 6 calls being processed in the time. I say that to illustrate the time savings in being able to do this, but I also say this that to make you aware that in busy days, busy times during storms, that dispatcher now has the ability to go through and hit one call after the next. So you should anticipate for Samantha to announce your call, you get on the truck, and if you're listening to dispatch, you may have already arrived before you hear her dispatch it out over the dispatch channel. It's not a duplication. It just took that long to get down into you because they were all queued up waiting to go out. That's the same wait time that today you would have to wait because they're just sitting there waiting on our human dispatcher to get to each one of them individually before they can get to it. You just salvage that much time by hearing it quickly through this fire station alerting and getting out the door. That's all I have. Got the question?
On air alerts, we have a little shortcut with 3 buttons. 3 dots, we can hit that button, go to airport ops.
The MSI button's still functional on the
Still
radios.
functional.
I use it here for yours of choice. I didn't know you guys were using that. I've been told Station 5 staff uses it for UNCGPD, but that feature will still be there for you, or at least it is in my code. We'll have to change here.
Do we have to do anything to set that up, or is it?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
because it's user defined.
So something we have to do, or just
Yeah,
request it?
yeah. I mean, you just go to, and hold the button down, like sitting your preset of your car. Because whatever you would like, some trucks might want the IMAP, or somebody else might want this or that, ANTPD or whatever, that they can just program their radios or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't know that feature existed, so I started playing with the radios a little bit. Yeah, go down to whatever you want. Like you said, hold that button down for 3 seconds, you'll hear it beep and it's programmed. There you go. Any other questions?
You might have covered on this or something, but, so like, if you get this back on a fire alarm or something, and you get there, and it turns out that it's actual structure fire, and you're gonna request, now, on the communication side of it, when you go back to, ops, then, do they dispatch actual, or does it have to go over to dispatch, to dispatch?
Remember, your dispatcher is
That two
today is
positions.
ops, yeah. So let me ask you today, in that very scenario, are you gonna call and ask for an upgrade for a structure fire on ops, or